Managing contractors is not like you've been told. All the information and the strategies out there are better suited for higher-end renovations, new building, and commercial work. Unfortunately, these things all get grouped together as construction, but they may as well be totally different industries. There was actually a time where I would walk into my office every day and say, I hope I don't have another 10K day. Yeah, that meant that I hoped that the bad news that I was about to get didn't cost me over $10,000. I thought that was just the price you pay to be in business. What an idiot. But after those bank accounts got into the red zone, I knew it was time for a change. So I did two things. First, I created a system for managing contractors that had rules and checkpoints that I would never stray from. I would work every day to hold contractors and myself accountable to this system. I think that's what you call a shameless plug. The second, I became mean. Nobody was going to give me a 10K day again. So I grabbed my proverbial hammer and I headed out to job sites to bust some heads with my newly developed system. It worked like a charm. I had everybody right where I wanted them. However, there was one little problem. First half of my day would be spent on job sites, trying to keep these guys in line. And then the second half of my day would be spent trying to recruit new subcontractors, because it turns out my new attitude wasn't making me any friends. You see, the guys who choose to do these investor-grade rehabs, they're a different group of guys, and they require a different set of skills to manage them appropriately. But I needed to adjust my attitude, get my priorities right, and zoom out to see the bigger picture. And also, why would these guys want to do this type of work? The key to managing subcontractors and GCs is prioritizing relationships over micromanaging. Micromanaging destroys relationships, and setting clear expectations builds it. You need to have a management system that tells both parties who's responsible for what. So here are the steps. Step number one, make a smart scope of work. One, clarify your own expectations for the project. Making a good scope of work is on you, not the contractor. It's your project. Therefore, it's your responsibility to clarify and communicate the vision. Two, give your contractors a smart scope of work. This type of scope prioritizes wants over needs. To put it simply, a want is something you might do on your personal house, and a need is something that you do that increases your profit. Three, make a list of all the jobs on a project. Remember, these are the individual items of work on the project, like framing or flooring. These are the items you're hiring the contractor to do. Four, make detailed notes on what actually needs to be done to complete the job. This information helps you set expectations. The more detailed you are, the higher level of accountability you can have with your contractors. Don't just assume they're going to know what you want done. Give them the information in detail. Five, double check your work. Might sound obvious, but it's not. The extra time you spend planning will go a long way once the project starts. Six, determine what the budget is for each one of these line items. Now, you're not going to show the contractor this, but you need to make sure that you know what the budget is of your overall project, job by job. These aren't exacts. These are more like goals for yourself. So as an example, you think framing is going to cost you $4,000. Well, if the contractor comes in at $8,000, you know that either you missed something or the contractor's trying to get a fast one on you. Or vice versa, maybe they come in at $2,000 and you thought it was going to be $4,000. Maybe you have a problem with misalignment here. Step number two, meet the contractor at the job site. The smart scope of work is ready to go. It's time to meet the contractor on site. Now, there are a few things to note before we get started. One is, do not move to this step until you own that property or there is a strong possibility of you closing. Remember, our priority here is building relationship capital. If you meet a contractor at a job site, ask him to take the time to put together a bid, and then you bail because you don't end up buying the property, you basically shattered a chance of building a strong relationship with him. Two, if you're going to require specific licenses, insurance, and permits, make sure the contractor is capable of getting those before you meet with him. If he's not going to be able to deliver on this, don't waste your time or theirs with meeting with him. Three, now this does go against popular opinion. like a lot of things that I do. But I do not believe that you should get 3 bids for every job. I think that what that ends up doing is burning relationship capital with 2 out of 3 people every single time. And so this is why you need to have time on your side, so you can get a bid, go through it appropriately, really focus on building relationship capital with that one contractor, and likely, if you do it correctly, you'll get a good price and you'll end up working with that person. And if not, then you move on to the next one, no problem. Now let's get back to the actual steps. 1 is keep the primary goal of building relationship capital in mind. Be humble. You're not special to him. You're one of many potential customers. Sell that project. You're great to work with. You make things easy for him. You have an endless flow of projects. And best yet, you pay quickly. 2, hand him your printed out smart scope of work while clearly casting the vision that you have for this project. That's one way to make this super easy for him. And as you talk to him, listen to the feedback. Often contractors will notice things that you missed while you were making that scope of work and potential obstacles to your vision. And after you go through all that, you'll need to reconsider what your vision might be. You see, they may have better ideas than you to help you achieve that vision. And so listen and learn from them. 3, make adjustments as you go along. You have a printed scope of work with you, use it. Even better, take a video with your contractor as you walk through the property. Narrate everything that you see with him right next to you, and make sure at the end of it, you both agree with everything that you've been discussing. 4, let him know your next steps after the meeting. You'll update the scope of work based upon the video you just took, and you'll send him both the video and the written scope of work for him to make a bid. The point that you're trying to make is this. You want to set expectations and start that project in alignment with each other. The video and the updated scope of work is a tool for both of you to rely on rather than your memory, which will ultimately fail you during the project itself. 5 is talk about who's paying for what, specifically materials. Now, here's my advice. Make sure that you have a list for all the materials that you buy for each job on a project and supply your subcontractor with that, and then they can purchase it under your account. That way you know what's happening on the project, but you don't have to use the bandwidth of going up there and purchasing it yourself. It'll be built into their bid. See, this is the win-win. They get the extra layer of protection that they don't have to cover the materials up front, and then you get it all under your account so you can make sure that you have the right materials being purchased and that you know what's going on the project. It's kind of like a built-in project management tool without you having to go to the job site every 5 days. 6, do not discuss the price or the budget here. This meeting is about casting the vision so they know what to bid on and to further deepen your relationship capital. Step number 3, deny or approve the bid. So you've gotten a bid back that's too high. So how do you deny it while preserving relationship capital? Because even if you can't make it work, you might want to work with this person down the road. But first, let's see if we can get the price in our strike zone. 1, be nice about it. Put it on your shoulders. Conversation looks something like this. Man, you know, I saw your pricing and something is not lining up with what I was thinking. I must have missed something when I gave you the scope of work. Could you help me understand how you came to these numbers? 2 is reduce the scope for that specific contractor. Tell them, well, you know, I like the way that you price these certain jobs, but these other ones just don't work for me. Now, I do understand that you price the whole thing in some sort of efficiency, so I know that taking out some of these jobs might affect the overall price, and we can relook at that. And I might say something like, you know, this is probably good for our first few projects anyway. It'll be better for both of us if you have a smaller chunk of work. That way, you know if you like working with me and I know if I like working with you. So get me the revised pricing with this smaller scope and let's take it from there. 3, maybe you're just not gonna get the prices right for this one and you'll have to wait for the next one, or maybe none at all. But generally when a contractor's prices are above what market price for contractors is, well, it's one of 3 things. 1, they don't like you. 2, their workload is too heavy right now. Or 3, they actually do just have too high of prices. 4, back to the drawing board. Go to your depth chart and try the next contractor on that project. Now, I mentioned something like this before, but sometimes you get a bid that's too low. Don't get excited just yet. If it seems like it's too good to be true, usually it is. A low bid generally means that you and the contractor are misaligned on what you actually expect for that job. So go back with the contractor and make sure they understand exactly what you want. Well, now let's cover how to approve a bid that's just right. 1, get it in writing. Make sure that you get the price and his version of the scope of work in writing. Now, some contractors will send this via email or a formal PDF bid, but most of the time in the rehab game, you'll get it via text at best. It's all the same. Written down is written down, so make sure you screenshot and save that text message. 2, provide checkpoints and pay schedules. When you approve the bid, you are agreeing to pay the contractor for his work. Rarely will you find a contractor who is willing to complete every item on a multi-job scope of work before being paid. So make sure that you have communicated the checkpoints which you are willing to pay. This means being clear on what jobs should be completed and what that looks like beforehand. 3, although we've been discussing the importance of relationship capital, never forget that money is power. Don't go paying ahead of your pre-established checkpoints. If you want to break your original checkpoints into smaller chunks, go for it, but never pay without the checkpoint being passed. 4, get copies of your required licenses, insurance, and/or permits. Don't let yourself get too far into the project without having these in hand. The more time that passes, the harder it is to get this stuff. Step number 4, practice accountability. Once the project begins, things get a little easier. You let the contractor work while you continue with other business. Eventually, he'll reach one of the checkpoints. Now it's time to practice accountability. 1, confirm your expectations for the checkpoint have been met. Is the job complete to your satisfaction? Does it match what was agreed upon in the scope of work? Remember, you can consult your video and your written scope of work if necessary. 2, pay fast. If everything looks good, pay them right away. Don't leave them waiting. Seriously, this will go a long way towards building relationship capital. Set up a time to look over things in person or if necessary on video. Now, if a checkpoint, therefore a payment, is contingent upon a third-party approval, like an inspector for a bank or the inspector for the city, make sure the contractor knows that, because that is going to delay things just a little bit and you don't want that to be a surprise. 3, dealing with change orders. They're certainly going to happen on these rehab projects. I mean, nobody's got x-ray vision. And so, how do you handle these and how do you make sure you're not getting taken advantage of? Well, first and foremost, you need to make sure that time is on your side. If you're pressed up against the wall on time, you're going to make the wrong decisions here. So make sure you're buying deals with that in mind. First off, never get into the habit of automatically accepting a change order, even if you have been working with somebody for a really long time. It's just kind of the easy way to go, and water always flows in the easiest path. So make sure you set up some rocks in its way. And so what I typically do is say something along the lines of, man, you know, I got to do my due diligence for the investor on this or the customer on this. And if I don't, and I just said yes, I would feel like I was doing wrong. And so I'm just gonna send one of my guys out there to take a look. Or if you don't have an internal crew, you would say something like, you know, I actually work with this contractor who, for whatever reason, can do that job really cheap. And so I just want to send them out to see what they think about that. And you may actually send a couple different people out there. This is the time to get second opinions. And I think that as long as you have the conversation the right way, this doesn't burn any relationship capital. Anytime a change order comes up, it's kind of hard on everybody. And so just treat it appropriately and then move on. 4, sometimes you're going to fall into the contractor's black hole. This is where you're trying to get a hold of the contractor that's working on that job and you can't get a hold of them. You can't get them back to the job site. Maybe you're getting some communication from them, but not much. This happens pretty commonly in the rehab game. And so what do you do in that situation? First, don't let your emotions get control of you. Make sure you keep a level head and make sure that you stay honest. Don't try to get them back through your frustration. So what I would do in a situation like this is I would do this in text message to make sure that there is some sort of written documentation. And I would say something along the lines of, let's just use an example. They're doing a flooring job. I would give them a reasonable time expectation. Something along the lines of, hey, Mr. Contractor, I'm sorry, I just can't wait for these floors to be done any longer. And so I got to tell you that if they're not done within 2 weeks of this date, which is, whatever the date is, that I'm going to have to let you off the job and get a different contractor in there to do them. Please let me know if this is going to be an issue to you. We'll settle up on pay and then we'll call it a day. I did not mean to make that rhyme. And then you stick to it. Make sure that the expectation you set is very reasonable, beyond reasonable, really, just so you can make sure that you feel good when you have to fire that person if you have to. And also, don't use lies to try to get them there. Say the facts. It has been 2 weeks since you've been at the job site. I have tried to contact you on these days that are actual days that you tried to contact them. Make sure you text them that when you're setting the expectation. Now 5, do not hold back on your accountability. If you've done your job and set expectations appropriately throughout the project in video form and in written form, and you've stayed aligned throughout the whole thing, if they're not doing what they said they were going to do not hold back. This is the time to be tough. This is the time to say, hey, this is exactly what we agreed upon. I've done my part. Now it's your turn. Now here are just some quick tips for you. 1, I don't believe in bonuses. You'll hear it suggested that you should give contractors bonuses if they complete a job on time and especially if they finish early. For me, the bonus is just having another project lined up for them when they get done and then paying them quickly when they reach each checkpoint. The more jobs you can give them, especially back to back, the more likely they are to stick around. So make sure your contractors know that you have projects coming up and then actually get one lined up and waiting for them. Now, one more thing to say on bonuses. If you give a bonus, they're always going to expect a bonus when they complete early. I never thought this was a good strategy in the corporate environment, and I definitely don't think it's a good strategy on the job site. 2, sometimes you want to check up on their work in between checkpoints without looking like a micromanager. So just walk the job site because you needed to answer a question for the customer or an investor that you have on the project, or because you had to look at something for another job. But you can use this as an opportunity to get eyes on how things are going without being a micromanager. Because micromanaging does burn relationship capital. But sometimes with a new guy, especially, I want to know that we're on the same page. 3, this is a very important one. If you keep pressing on a contractor for a price or to do something that you want on a job, well, you'll probably get the answer you want, but I doubt you'll get the result you want. So make sure you're actually aligned, not just forcing them to say what you want to hear. Also a great way to enter the contractor's black hole. 4 is, as much as I can, I try to avoid having multiple different contractors working on the same project. Because when there's always somebody else to blame when something goes wrong. 5, keep the job site clean. Cluttered job not only looks unprofessional, but it also decreases efficiency on the ground. Make a clean job site and establish expectation for everyone working on the project. The more trash there is left out, the more inclined everybody else will be to continue leaving it out. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Rehab contractors are a different breed and they require a different set of skills. Those skills are all about building relationships. My advice to you is to use what you learned here and make a checklist, or use the one that I provided for you in the description, and use it to set clear expectations, hold accountability, and then go pay quickly. Using these tactics will certainly help you become a more effective project manager, which is one of the pillars of our all-weather approach. Check out this video so you can really learn to free up your bandwidth and grow your real estate organization. Good luck out there, investors.